Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. I am excited to introduce you to our guest today, Paul Daniels. Paul Daniels is an international speaker, a three-time board advisor, an international best-selling author, and the founder of Peripheral Thinkers. Paul helps leaders find and apply new perspectives to build innovative businesses that last. Paul's influence spans over 4 decades, 31 industries, 27 countries, and $21 billion in new revenue. More importantly, he is a collector of perspectives, a connector of people, and a challenger of conventional thinking. He believes that you can access everything you need to achieve anything you can imagine. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mr. Paul Daniels. Paul, welcome to the show.
Dan, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being here, especially Paul. You know, I'm reading my LinkedIn over the weekend and I see this picture of you laying down with a giant bandage on your knee, and you just had knee surgery and you're still recovering and you're planning for a rehab. Thank you for being on so quickly. Yeah. I think you had surgery on Friday, right?
Yeah, I did. And the drugs haven't affected me at all.
I knew that was coming. Listen, well, I think, so we're recording here on a Monday, so it's only been 3 days since you had your knee surgery. And typical for someone that what I would expect from you, Paul, you're already planning a surfing trip. You've been told that recovery is going to take 8 weeks, but you said, you know what, I'm going to get it done in 4 weeks because I've got a surfing experience that you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Exactly. Born and raised in Southern California, and I'm an old guy. So anytime I get an opportunity to surf anywhere, I take it because I don't know whether it's going to be the last one. So I've got I had some surfing sessions scheduled for December. That's not going to happen because of this, but first part of the year, I'm just not going to miss it. So I may end up just kind of paddling around and barely standing up, but I don't care. I'm going surfing.
That's fantastic. And you're in the Dallas area, right?
I am. Yeah. I travel internationally, obviously, but I'm in the Dallas area. There are a couple of man-made waves in the area within a couple hours.
Yeah.
That are pretty fun to do.
That's fantastic. So, since we're talking about surfing and you're going to see Paul and you and I are so very similar in the way we think and the way we approach life. You're probably going to expect that we're going to go left, we're going to go right, and we're going to go back and forth. Where's your favorite place you ever surfed?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I mean, there's some great places in the Hawaiian Islands, of course. I still haven't surfed Fiji. I wanted to do that, but there's some kind of no-name beaches up and down Baja that, as a kid, we'd slip across the border and go down past Tijuana, and it's the same wave, sort of all up and down Baja, just not as crowded. In fact, hardly crowded at all. Now this is 60s and 70s, so it was a while ago.
Yeah.
The Pacific is my favorite. Anywhere in the Pacific, there are a couple of spots that I'm not going to name because they're still secret and they're still kind of secluded that are private in Baja.
Oh man,
that I love. Yeah.
Well, Paul, I'm so glad you came into my periphery and we had a chance to meet. We've had a couple of conversations, learned a little bit about Peripheral Thinkers, but even as you were out, because you and I were corresponding over the last few days, even your out of office message, I am on the periphery for a few days. I'll be back. What is tell us about Peripheral Thinkers? So our podcast is called Lead Different. So I'm all about interviewing people and sharing leadership tips from people who are willing to do things different than everybody else. And those are the clients that I like working with and at Why Not Leadership. Tell us what is Peripheral Thinkers? It's a trademark, it's the name of your company.
Yeah.
What is a peripheral thinker? And tell us a little bit more about it.
So peripheral thinking is a skills model that is designed to help individuals think differently, obviously. And peripheral thinking came about uh, sort of a genesis throughout my life. As a kid, I was labeled stupid, slow, lazy, a daydreamer. Teachers would say that about me, sit me in the back of the class, don't speak up, just be quiet, and I'm going to pass you to the next class. Um, it followed me into university, even started to follow me into my professional career. But by age 39, I wasn't called stupid. They were using business terms like an outsider, an unconventional thinker, right? And I generated more than $1 billion, but I was still climbing the ranks of multiple Fortune 500 companies, still an outsider. And at 30, I was diagnosed with something, and it turned my light bulb on. So I started digging into this diagnosis. What I found is that there's a set of super skills that are found in only about 10 to 15% of the population, but it represents a huge percentage of the most prolific innovators throughout history. People like Ford and Edison, Da Vinci, Agatha Christie, JFK, Richard Branson, Barbara Corcoran, Aaron Brockovich, the list goes on. All these people were innovators in their field, and in some cases created new industries. They also all happened to be dyslexic. So I was diagnosed with dyslexia. What I found is that while only 10 to 15% of the population is born with dyslexia, between 20 and 30% of entrepreneurs and nearly 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic. In fact, NASA actively recruits people with dyslexia. About 50% of NASA is dyslexic. So there's something to this, right? It's not a disability, it's a learning difference. And because of the need for this kind of thinking throughout the world, we can't birth enough dyslexics. That is the genesis of peripheral thinking. And the Peripheral Thinkers business is speaking, consulting, and board advising on how to think differently, how to lead differently. There, I got your plug in, and how to find opportunities where other people just see challenges, to find choices and possibilities where there are just problems and difficult paths. And it's not woo-woo, it's very simple. And in my keynote, in the 4 minutes, I teach them one of the skills that the audience then has for the rest of their life.
Oh, I love that. So Paul, you've taken something that a lot, and I love that you talked about it. I had Dr. Holly White on the podcast before, and I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to her, but she talks about the gift of ADHD and dyslexia and neurodivergence overall, because and when you hear her story, it's very similar. She's the kid that was different, kid that was told, hey, just be quiet, the kid that did things different than everybody else. But I love what you've brought up, those stats, when you talk about 10 to 15% of the population, only 10 to 15% of the population has dyslexia, yet it makes up 40% of self-made millionaires and 20 to 30% of the greatest thinkers and innovators out there. So it sounds like we need to have more dyslexics, so I can take some pleasure in the fact that I'm a fellow ADHDer like yourself, but I am not a dyslexic, so I'm going to have to work on that so I can join you fully in the club. But I think the point of it is you're a different thinker. You're a peripheral thinker. You're a neurodivergent thinker, and that's a gift, not a disability. 100%. What was it like for you when that reality hit for you? You're not the outsider. You're actually somebody that's in high demand. That had to be a tremendous mindset shift for you.
Absolutely. It didn't happen overnight, right? So just learning, boom, that I'm dyslexic and ADHD. I was diagnosed the same time our daughter was diagnosed. So a lot of my focus was on our daughter and helping her through that. And she's a brilliant mind like many. And so it took some time, but I did start digging into it. What is it about dyslexia? What is it about this, quote, disability that makes certain things easy and certain things very difficult? As that continued to go on, and as more and more people did research, Cambridge, Harvard, MIT. In fact, they even called dyslexia the MIT disease because of the number of students at MIT that have dyslexia. Obviously, it's not a disability. A lot of brainiacs at MIT, right? As I dug into that, I started to see more and more, quote, dyslexic, neurodivergent people popping up as, history's famous people, like I'd mentioned. At digging deeper and looking into the research and corporate research around neurodivergence, come across several case studies and several research that showed specific skills. And as I'm reading through the skills and understanding what they mean and how they're used, yes, I get that. Check, check, check. So when I learned that the World Economic Forum identified the key skills that are needed for companies across all industries to be successful in 2025, 27, 2030, and beyond, and found that of those top skills, the top are 9 cognitive skills, 8 of them are found innately within dyslexics, but we can't get enough dyslexics born. I went, there it is. That's how I can contribute. That's where I can plug in and share. So that began my journey of translating these skills from just understanding how a neurodiverse person sees the world to learning how to see the world like a dyslexic innovator, so that I can teach leaders and business people, here are the things that you can do to find more choices than challenges, to find the elements needed to innovate right now, not when they learn how to split an atom in a new way, right now. And I can show them how to do this. And that's the genesis of peripheral thinking. And that's, for me, been like my life's dream. It's what I will do until I stop breathing. I have to share this message.
Well, I love so 2 things. And you know what? Let's do this for the viewers, Paul, because I want to follow up on, you said a lot of brilliant things there. I want to make sure we follow up on, but I want to let our listeners know, because everybody who comes on the show does their YOS, and we know the why, the how, and the what. And guys, it's no surprise that Paul Daniels' his why is to challenge the status quo and think differently. As a peripheral thinker, you knew that was going to be in his top 3. His how is better way. So how he thinks, how he brings out of the box solutions is by finding better ways to do things and share them with the world. And he just shared with us, he figured out a way to teach people how to think like a dyslexic, and he's sharing it with the world. There's a better way to think that way. And so he's sharing it with the world, and his what is to contribute to the success of others. And he's definitely doing that. It's so what I love about using the YOS discovery is when I have my guests take it and then I look at their results and then I compare them with the story. I mean, you literally just covered your why, how, and what in the story that you just told, in the fact that we know that you're a peripheral thinker, you're a neurodivergent creative thinker, and that's where you thrive. How you do that is by finding better ways to do things. And you said, hey, I figured out a way to teach people. And you said, I think in the pre-show, we talked about it. In 4 minutes, you can teach leaders. In your keynote, you teach leaders how to think like a dyslexic, so that they can join that brilliant group of people that does things different from the start. And then overall, at the end of the day, what people can count on from you is you're there to help. You're there to make a difference. You're there to make a positive impact, which you are doing, Paul. So number one, there's a couple of things I want to say. As a fellow neurodivergent, I am always so glad to meet people who are doing things at a really high level with our superpower. And let's not call it a disability, with our superpower, which is to think differently and outside the box. But Paul, those of us who share this trait also have a trait that is tough to deal with, and that's our lack of organization and our lack of follow through sometimes. How do you overcome that to be as successful as you have been, to get the things done that you don't enjoy doing as much, right? Right. As a different thinker? I'd love to hear how you've overcome that, because you've obviously had some great level of success.
I've been very fortunate, and some of that is learned traits. Because I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia, I really did think I was kind of stupid. But I knew that I needed to get through school, that I needed a job, that I needed to to fit in, if you will. And so I used my neurodivergent perspective to watch how other people organize their day, how they overcame certain complex challenges, how they thought through different things. And so I've just simply adapted some of the seven habits of highly effective individuals, right? So I've done that. I've learned some of those things in order to stay organized. I have certain mnemonic devices, and I've got a way of structuring content because stuff's coming to me all the time. So yes, I am a yellow note, sticky note junkie, but at the end of the day, all of those are applied into a format or a framework so that I know exactly what I'm going to do with those thoughts. Some are going to be put aside, some are going to be actionable, some are long-term planning. So what I've done is I've learned from some of the best on how they organize themselves, and then I apply the way I think to their processes, procedures. And of course, I look for ways to improve them. I think a little outside the box. So I have a couple of different tools that I use to capture information, and then the follow through, right? So I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but that's kind of the genesis of it.
No, I think you bring up one of the things I know about people with the why of better way somewhere in their top three, because there's 9 whys, and you've got two of the two creative whys are at your top 2, challenge and better way. But what we know about people with the why of better way in their top 3 is they look for people who have done it before and they copy. And then since you're a better way guy, not only do you copy, you improve it, right? And then you find a way to apply it the way that it makes sense for you.
Right.
And so that becomes a strength. I have found the same thing. So the opposite of challenge, Paul, in the 9 whys is right way. People who are right way believe in doing things the right way. They follow the rules.
Yeah.
They don't. So your LinkedIn profile starts, I think your description is break all the rules.
Yep.
You have a newsletter that's called Break All the Rules, right?
Right.
So
right.
the Break All the Rules newsletter is all about breaking the rules. Right way people are all about following the rules. So you and I would probably have a hard time. You would think, right? You would think that you and I would have a hard time getting along with somebody who is a right way because they follow the rules. They do the things the way they're supposed to be done. If they're taught to do something a certain way, guess what? They're going to do it that way until somebody comes along like you and I and says, hey, have you ever thought of doing it different? And they'll say, no, this is the way we've always done it. It works. Don't break. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right.
Right.
And what we find is these people are so necessary for you and I. Because they create the structures that you and I won't think of. One of my favorite people in the world is Krista Martin, who's my speaker coach, and she's a right way person. She creates frameworks that you can follow. I know how to create a keynote based on the frameworks that she creates that have been proven successful. And so we need both kinds, right?
Absolutely.
How do you deal with somebody who's very by the rules, and you probably get hired by some of these people because they're in the box and hey, let's hire somebody to get us to start thinking outside the box. How do you interact with people who are saying, hey, Paul, we're going to hire you, but you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'd love to just hear, how that pitch goes, how those conversations go.
Sure. So first and foremost, having the right way is not a wrong thing. Thinking that there are proven ways of doing things, absolutely valid and valuable. When I was in martial arts, I won the 1993 U.S. Karate Championship. And I did that by doing 1,000 right hand punches a day, 1,000 left hand, overhand, chop it, all of those again and again and again, until it was so natural that then I could become more creative and start mixing things up, right? It's learning that skill first and then allowing your creativity and, in my case, dyslexia and peripheral thinking to kick in. So for when I meet people that are very right way, I say, awesome, that's terrific. You know how well your solutions and your approaches are working because you have followed them and you're tracking them and you're seeing the efficacy of those. Have you seen that they continue to improve the return on your investment in those systems? And for the most part, the answer is going to be no, because nothing has an upward trajectory to infinity. There will always be dips and valleys and plateaus. And it's at that intersection that we can have a different conversation. Okay, so you're here. The likelihood of your processes and your right way of making it through that plateau and then moving back up again is less likely than it was in the beginning. So let's see some other ways that you might be able to use what you know and the right ways of people that are from seemingly unrelated industries and positions and jobs and countries and cultures. Let's see what they do. And theirs is proven as well, but you wouldn't use that because you're in software and these people are in the healthcare industry or they're in, the movie industry. Let's look at some of those. So I'm just taking them with me on a journey, and we find those things and the principles begin to become evident. And then that allows those principles to translate into their particular situation. Something that's already proven that they never would have seen before, perhaps even considered risky, is now not only not risky, but plausible and practical and applicable.
So, it's interesting you talk about that because you have to have, you can't break nothing. You have to have something, right? So
Right.
you have to, when somebody who's a right way person brings you something that works, something that's proven, and all you're looking for is how do you tweak it to make it better?
Mhm.
How can being different add to what they're already doing? Because the way we grow exponentially, and like you said, there's going to be hiccups. You're going to grow, you're going to slow down, you're going to grow, you're going to slow down. There's no one linear path, exponential growth path. But I like the fact that you bring in the innovation to something that already exists, and we know that about people with the how of better way. They take things that exist and make them better.
Mhm.
Again, this is how brilliant the assessment pegged you, Paul, because I definitely see this in you. One of the differences between the two whys of challenge and better way. Challenge people will do things different just to see what happens. You probably remember this in your life. Hey, let's see what happens what if we try it this way? Better
Yep.
way people will do it different if it's better. And
Mhm.
since you have both, you have the ability to come up with the creative idea, and you come up with that creative idea and then you make it better. And so
Mhm.
the one of the other challenges that better way people have is they're not so good at creating. You give them a blank sheet of paper and they're stuck. You give them a squiggle on a sheet of paper and they will make that squiggle better.
Right.
What's nice about you, you have a combination of both. You have that creative side that creates ideas, and then you have that better way side that improves them and
Right.
delivers them. So this is a great question I ask in my coaching. I want to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's not anything you can't handle. Can you think of a time, and I'm going to take your why, how, and what, where you challenged something that was being done by finding a better way to do it, and it led to it contributed to the success of the venture, the company, or the cause that you were supporting?
Yeah. So no, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
Interview's over, Dan.
Right. Yeah, lots of situations. There was a time when I was leading a sales team for a Fortune 500 company, North America. We had just come into North America. Long story short, the quota for the next year came out. And if interested, this is the story from my chapter in the best-selling book, Peak Performance Mindset Tools for Entrepreneurs. Not a plug, but if you'd like a copy, electronic copy, we'll figure out a way to get you one free. The story goes that the quota came down, and the quota for the following year was 10x what we had just accomplished in our first year in North America. So the challenge was that we didn't have enough in the pipeline to even manage that because it was long sales cycle, et cetera, et cetera. So I did what most innovative leaders do. I went shopping, like shopping, not shopping for a solution. We were looking for land. My wife and I were traveling around North Texas looking for some plot of land. Came across some land, it wasn't for sale. Met the person who owned the property, and as I'm driving back to Dallas, I'm thinking about this conversation I had with Mr. Johnson, who owned this property, and he talked about first right of refusal and some other things. I took that idea from real estate, applied that to the way we would contract and helped me also identify some targets. We found 3 targets, one of which was a slam dunk, but we couldn't do what we needed to do in fast enough time to meet the goal for that year. So I had to find a way to do this non-competitively. Use the first right of refusal language in a letter of intent. And then I also attached what our solution was, not to how it would help their organization, but how it would help their company grow. I knew that there was a large contract that was coming out, and this organization was trying to win that, and they needed a war chest. So I figured out, how do I get them money so that they can be properly positioned to win the deal? Fast forward, not too far, in 6 months. So that was January 1st, the first face-to-face meeting. I got a letter of intent signed, non-competitive, 6 months, prove that we can do what we say we can do, and we get the business for 10 years. June 7th, we signed the agreement. So 6 months, we signed what typically is an 18-month sales cycle. It was a $200 million deal, but within 12 months from that date, our client signed a very large deal, which was worth $1.2 billion annually.
Wow.
I taught them about peripheral thinking. I can't share their name with you because it's still confidential, but they've been using peripheral thinking ever since. And they went from a company of 10 billion to almost 12 billion with that first win. And they're now over $350 billion annually.
Wow, Paul, that I love that. That's exactly the kind of example that I was looking for. And here's what we have found, right, in the work that I do with leaders, is when we do the YOS and I say, okay, here's your why of challenge, here's your how of better way, and here's your what of contribute. Give me an example. And people have hundreds. They're like, that's what I do, Dan. That is
Right.
my gift. And true to form, you're like, I have lots of examples, but that's a brilliant example of exactly that. You know, you talked about your book, Peak Performance Mindset Tools for Entrepreneurs. Thank you for, we'll put that in the show notes to
Sure.
give people access to it. But if people want access to it, what's the best place to go?
Just go to my website, pauldanielsjr.com, and in the contact tab, there's an option there that you can say book.
Perfect.
Check book, and it'll ask you for some information, and I'll personalize an electronic copy. I won't send you the entire book. I can only send you my chapter, but you can also buy the book on Amazon, and you'll get my chapter along with 20 other contributing authors.
That's fantastic. So we'll make sure and put that in the show notes. Paul, what are we going to learn in your chapter? What's if you had to give me the 30-second ad, what are we going to learn in that one chapter?
That challenges are common,
Mm-hmm.
that there are more choices than most people will acknowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can confidently challenge convention and find multiple paths to innovation and to growth in the most common places. Like right where you are right now, you can find something that you haven't noticed before. Break that down into a principle of why it caught your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Use that principle along with other principles from driving to Starbucks today or visiting a relative over the weekend, and combine those principles into a new innovative approach, solution, process, idea. And it happens all of the time. You know, I've mentioned this before, and we can do it perhaps if we've got time, but
Yeah.
the whole going to the moon was an absolute masterclass of peripheral thinking.
Right.
It wasn't because we had to create things that had never been done before. The elements existed. All the elements, think about it, at its core, all the elements to get to the moon and back existed. There was technology, and there were atoms, there was boosters, there was aerospace, there was all those things. But nobody had, until NASA had said, okay, we'll take all the ideas, bring it, send it. We'll put them all on the table, and we'll start seeing which ones fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was considered, conventional wisdom said, it can't be done. In fact, when JFK said we're going to put a person on the moon by the end of the decade, conventional wisdom, I think, wet itself and passed out in the corner.
Right? It can't be done. How often do
Right.
we hear that? We
Exactly.
hear it can't be done. The Great Wall of China. How are you going to
Oh,
build that? It can't be done.
can be
The
done.
Wright brothers. How are you going to get human flight? It can't be done. For every person that thought it could be done, there were thousands of people saying it can't be done.
Right.
And now I understand why, thanks to the research and the stats that you shared, because there's a very
Yeah.
small percentage of us that think that it can be done. And we're
Mhm.
the rebels and the rabble rousers that are going to try to do something that nobody else has ever done, right?
Yes, but now everyone can. Now everybody can. I can show you how. So you can come on. It's safe. We'll
Yeah.
get you a coat. You can be part of the club. All of that. So you can be the rebel rouser and still be very straight laced and get your work done. But know that it's safe to think outside the box. In fact, I'm going to give you a secret for those of you watching and listening. There is no box. Like thinking outside the box is an oxymoron because it has its own conventional constraints. The box.
Right.
No, you just think. You just think. There's no box.
There's
So
no box to think in. Just think.
right, just think. Look around. See, observe, capture, consider, reconfigure, and go.
So I love this. So I'm going to ask you a question. I think in one of our conversations, you talked about taking a group of people you were
Yeah.
coaching to a different kind of experience, very early in the morning. So
Yes.
tell us about that, because I think about it, and I've mentioned it to a couple of people, and they're like, there's something to be learned from everything, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what your experience proves. But tell us about that early morning with some clients
Right.
you were coaching.
So typically going to be an executive level, often a business owner, CEO of corporation, whatever. And we have a little mastermind and we talk about peripheral thinking. We go through the skills that each of them are working on. And at some point, there's something that just triggers in me that everything is getting comfortable, that we're saying the same things, but we're not really digging all the way into it. And so that's when I say, hey, our next meeting, which happens to be on Friday, it's going to be next Friday. And here's the address that we're going to be meeting at. And oh, by the way, we're meeting at 3:30 a.m. What? Yes, 3:30 a.m. This is the address. It's not optional. You will be there, or I will call you out. So be there. And it happens to be a donut shop. So we got a friend that owns a donut shop. We go to a donut shop and we work from 3:30 to about 5:30 before anybody starts coming in and getting donuts. But we work and we're not very good. And some of the donuts we make, they get tossed away. But it's an experience. And I know what's happening, but I'm not coaching or anything. We're getting messy and dirty and they're tired and cranky and I give them coffee. At the end, we grab a dozen donuts and a pot of coffee and we head out and sit on the curb and we start talking about what we learned. And the normal things will come out. Okay, yeah, it was pretty well organized and some other, well, how would you apply that to your business, Dan? And Dan says, well, I'm a coach of people and how they think differently. And I definitely could see that there's some different ways of thinking, but I mean, nothing jumps out. And I'll ask a few more others. And then pretty soon someone will say, but Dan, did you notice how that just by a look, that supervisor, the baking manager, helped guide the direction of that worker's focus to what needed to happen at that moment? What if there was a way for you to have something like, I don't know, an operating system that you could use and you could just point to as a trigger to bring that individual to the point of focus that you want them to have?
Yeah.
Oh, I could do that. And then Dan says to Jen, who is the president of a bank, hey, Jen, did you notice how they baked these certain cinnamon rolls first, but they only do a certain batch and they limit the number that you can buy? It makes it very exclusive. In fact, did you notice that the people that were coming out while we're sitting here on the curb, that some of them have those cinnamon rolls and they came here early just because they knew they were going to be available? Is there something in your bank that would raise the exclusivity of some kind of client that you might have? Okay, so, and now it's going, and I'm the one that's eating the donuts, and that's how I got my tummy, and I'm drinking the coffee, which is why I'm all wired all the time. So that's that's just an example. Of course, I made the people up just out of off the top of my head, but that's the kind of thing that happens when you don't have a box.
Right. Well, and I think what you're talking about is experiential learning, right? I mean,
Sure.
everything that happens every day, there's a lesson in just about everything that we do, and I think you're really great at capturing that stuff. Yeah, just a visit to a to a donut shop can
Yeah.
lead to tremendous insights. And in this mastermind group, when you've got some high level leaders thinking of different ways to do things. I mean, exclusivity. I just had a workshop today. As a matter of fact, I was going to mention to you, did a workshop this morning with an executive group from a bank.
Oh,
And the CEO had your why and how just flipped. He was a better way challenge guy. And again,
okay.
and contribute was not in his top three, but trust was. So he's a
Mhm.
guy who likes to challenge the status quo, find better ways, and build trust. And as a matter of fact, all three of these guys I won't say the name either, but all three of them had trust as their number three. And I like a bank where the top three guys have trust in their top three
Of course.
people we
Yeah.
can trust, right?
Right. 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 And bankers are not known as creatives, right?
Right.
But everyone is creative. Just to break that norm. If you've heard this before and you say I'm not creative, here's the deal. You were born creative. To create is to cause something to happen as a result of your action.
Mm,
You got dressed today. You put on the clothes. You created what you're wearing. You didn't maybe sew it, but you created the way you look. There you go. So you're creative. So just get rid of the fact that you think you're not creative. Creativity is not only for artists and poets and musicians. No, everyone is creative. But there are certain levels of creativity. And you're right. We don't want bankers to have creative accounting strategies,
right.
right? That break rules. But we do want them to be creative enough to say, Mr. Daniels, I've noticed this and this. Did you know that we have a couple of investment vehicles that may actually perform better than what we're doing for you here? Would that be of help to you? Now, that's kind of a creative approach, right?
Right.
There
Exactly.
you go.
No, I love that you brought that up because you're absolutely right. There's no such thing as you're not there's no such thing as I'm not smart, right? Because
Yes.
people with our ADHD or dyslexia will get told you're not smart. And what
Yeah.
little do we realize we're actually and it's just a different way of thinking. It's not that we're learning deficient, we learn differently. So we learned different all along, and we
Correct.
needed different experiences in order to take in what we needed in order to advance in our degrees, in our high school
Mhm.
diplomas, in our advanced
Right.
degrees. It was a different way of doing it.
And to put a very fine point on that, we've only been told that we're not smart since reading and education have been normalized.
Right.
So go back to a time when reading and writing were not common among the population. We weren't stupid. We were
Right.
the inventors. We were business owners. We were everything.
Yeah.
We were all of those things. It's only been, in the last several hundred years that we've been taken as not conforming to the norm.
Yeah. That is so true because, and even in education, if education has
Right.
changed, right? The way education has become
Mhm.
so rigid, right? And
Sure.
you and I probably aren't going to do good sitting at our desk perfectly and taking out our pencil, putting it on the right side of the desk and our notebook on the left and making sure that we're taking notes. By the way, I'm left-handed, so I have to do it the other way. And the desk
Yeah.
isn't built for left-handers to begin
Right.
with, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of things that are different here. I want to, I know we're running low on time, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I did want to ask you this one question.
Sure.
Where did it begin for you? This thinking different, because when I have people, amazing people like Rosie Ward, Dr. Holly White, I'm going to have a couple of these guys that I worked with this morning on the podcast. I like to know when do you first remember you saying, why do we have to do it that way? Where does this why of challenging the status quo come from? Where's the first time you remember seeing it in action, or somebody telling you, you know what, Paul, you're different and that's a good thing, or maybe you're different and that's a bad thing. But when do you first remember it? How old were you?
I was 4. I remember this specifically. I was either 4 or 5. My dad, when I was that age, was an architect. And he worked nights and weekends. So he would bring work home. And as he brought work home, that means that we had all kinds of materials around the house, paper and pencils, markers, paints, drafting materials and so on. And one night he asked if I wanted to see something groovy. And okay, so it was the 60s, you get groovy. And I said, yeah. So he took out a square piece of white paper and he folded it in half, creased it down the middle, opened it up and pointed to some paints. And so I grabbed some paints and we added a little bit of that paint down that center crease. Okay. And then we got another tube of paint, and so on. It looked like a funky colored worm or something, but he folded the page back and he started to rub and rub and rub. And when he opened up that page, Dan, that funky worm had transformed into a butterfly that was exploding with more colors than I had ever seen. Yeah. There were oranges and purples, and my mind just went, wow. Okay, so it was a magic trick that most kids would find groovy, and I did. But at that moment, I already started to think, how could I rub together other things to create something new? Like, could I create the pedaling power of my bicycle? Can I put that on my skateboard so I could skate uphill? Right? Mm-hmm. So I remember that vividly at the age of 5, living in San Diego. And I know exactly where we were. And I remember the hill I wanted to skate up, all because of that experience. Now you fast forward, and of course I do this for a living,
right?
As a keynote speaker and an advisor and whatnot. But that moment, I realized that I see the world differently.
Yep. And
that anything is possible. If that could happen in just a few minutes from a piece of paper and some paint, holy cow, what else could happen?
Yeah. I love that quote that we talked about when we introduced you. You can access everything you need to achieve anything you can imagine. And the raw materials are there, right?
I'm living proof. I mean, where does this kid that had struggled reading, that basically cheated his way through college, give or take cheating, just taking more time and taking in information from different places. How does he become this boy idiot to business innovator, from lower middle class to helping companies do $21 billion in new business? How does that happen? Well, it's not because I'm super special. It's because I think differently, and I'm not stuck on those numbers. What I really want is to help 100,000 people by the end of 2025 learn at least one of those skills, and 1 million by the end of 2030. That is my passion. That's what I'll do, paid or unpaid. I will meet those, and we're at 25,000. I got 75,000 people to meet in next year. So hopefully we've got a few on the call that we can count as having learned a little bit about.
You know what? We'll put a link to wherever you need to. We'll put it in the show notes. That's a fantastic goal. And know that Why Not Leadership and the Lead Different podcast are going to help you any way we can to achieve your goals. I can't wait to see what we can do together in 2025. I know you've got a little bit of knee surgery recovery going on, but Paul, you are going to be hearing from the Lead Different podcast. You're going to be hearing from me. We're going to do some together, and you're not that far from me. I'm in New Mexico. You're in Dallas. I want to make sure you're one of the people that I meet in person in 2025. Wouldn't it be great if we spoke together somewhere?
Let's find a stage, buddy. Absolutely.
Let's share a stage somewhere together. What do you say we end the show on that note, Paul?
Hey, why not?
Thank you so much, Paul. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation that Paul and I had as much as I enjoyed having it with him. Please don't forget to share the podcast. Hit the like button. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on every one of the podcast applications out there, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. So make sure you share it with your friends, comment, like, give Paul Daniels' website a look. Look up Peripheral Thinkers. This is a guy that's making a difference in the world, and it's going to make a big impact in 2025 with a brand new knee and a surfing expedition in January. Paul Daniels, I can't wait to talk to you some more. Everybody have a great rest of the week, and don't forget to lead different.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different? When you do the things that everyone else does, you get the same results as everyone else gets. Let's do things a little different. Let's lead different. ask yourself this: why not?